and then ask yourself the question, you know that that's what the best in the industry is doing. Why aren't you doing the same? And it's like the information you'll get from that question is enormous.
Hey everyone, welcome back to an intense episode I had today with Elliot Roe. So he is a hypnotherapist, mindset coach, and today we get into some awesome stuff about what hypnotherapy actually does. We get into the subconscious and we get into what you can actually do if you get to that roadblock in your life and you really need to start to overcome yourself. We get into that, and it's quite amazing to see. Like, Elliot Roe works with some of the most professional people in their industries. Like, he's working with like gamblers and stuff, and talk about it, poker players that are, in terms of their mindset and stuff, are gambling on, going through streaks where they're going to make like $30 to $100 million in like a very short period of time. And the mindset tools and stuff that they need to overcome in order to get there. So it's very interesting. There's some crazy stories in here. So if you guys know anything as well about some of my coaching, what I essentially do is I help modern men to really put themselves in the best leadership position as possible for their family, for their business, for their own health, so that everyone around them can really be proud of them and they can rely on them as well. And if you're interested in any of that coaching, just send me a message. Send me a message on Instagram. The links are below. And if you do like this podcast and you get anything out of it, please hit that like, please hit that share, and please hit that subscribe. That would be amazing, especially if you share it on your story, because people are like, yeah, we get more people listening to this stuff. So that'd be awesome. But yeah, so without any further ado, guys, I hope you enjoy this podcast. I hope you take away some things from there. There's a challenge at the end that Elliot challenged you to do. So yeah, I hope you guys like this podcast, and we'll see you on the inside, and we hope you do that challenge too. Elliot, thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Hey, Corey, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, all good. So what have you been learning about recently? Is anything that's new that's coming up for you that you've been like, this is awesome, fantastic?
This is the next big thing. I think obviously most of my stuff is, I'm around the world of personal development, always trying new things. I've enjoyed recently utilizing breath work. So I find that something that's quite fun. So that's probably been the newest thing that I've added to my personal armory. And I've also been working quite a lot with sort of a sleep coach as well. And my sleep wasn't particularly bad, but it was something where I felt that if I could get it slightly better, it might improve my quality of life quite a lot. So really digging into sleep, the different things you can do to increase the hours that you get, to improve your HRV, to improve the levels of deep sleep, all of those sorts of things. That's been an interesting, I guess, probably 6-month journey for me, of really focusing in on that sleep and trying to improve that.
And what are you doing for it? Like, what are you doing for it? I'd love to hear about it.
So some of the stuff is relatively basic. So making sure the room's dark at night, making sure the room's colder. I have something called a chili pad here, which is like, it goes on the bed and keeps you cooler at night. I found that being really effective. And then trying to get more sunlight in the daytime as well. So first thing in the morning, making sure that your circadian rhythm gets started by getting that sunlight. So trying to get outside for walks much earlier than perhaps I would have in the day. Then it seems to have made a substantial difference. So that's definitely something I would say has been a bit of a hobby of mine over the last 6 months, probably the newest hobby.
Yeah, and what's like the results been?
I'm sleeping more hours now. And I think feeling a bit fresher as well. So, it's not magic. But as I say, I wasn't coming from an insomnia background. This was all just about optimization. But yeah, I'm getting more deep sleep. I'm getting more hours of sleep. So yeah, it's starting to work.
Yeah. And there's this, it's just so important, especially when you're taking like adding all those little 1%ers in, so that you can, get the highest performance possible. I'd love to know, like, from your perspective as well, like specifically from your perspective, like what the benefits of breath work.
So I'd say I've started that recently. It's something that I've found to be useful as a state change. So obviously the work I do is hypnotherapy. So it's a lot of digging into the subconscious, working through a lot of the memories, the issues of your past. With the breath work that I've done, I utilize it more for sort of either up-regulated breathing or down-regulated breathing to set myself up to the day, or set myself up for sleep. So I'm utilizing it more as a sort of a transition between the different states of the day. And that's where I found it to be a pretty powerful tool.
Awesome. So I'd also love to hear more about like your genius as well.
Mm.
So for people who are listening, what is it like specifically that you do to help people?
So I'm a mindset and performance coach. And really, what I'm doing is I'm working with top performers in lots of different industries. So, from CEOs of companies, Wall Street traders, professional athletes, lots of professional gamblers as well, um, helping them understand the self sabotages that they have in their day to day that are holding them back from being the best version of themselves in whatever it is they're trying to do. So, if they're I mean, one way of describing it is most people have something they know they should be doing, but they're not doing it. And you can't, they already know what they're supposed to do. So, more coaching around the specific subject won't actually solve that issue. Because if you know what to do, but you're not doing it, you already know what to do. So there's some kind of self sabotage there that's stopping them. There's some program in their mind that's stopping them doing that thing. And it's my job to help them understand why that's happening and help them work through it. And as I say, I use hypnotherapy to help people understand what in the past has created these problems for them and then help work through those problems and those issues in that state.
Amazing. I'd love to hear about a time or a story that you've had where it's been sort of like a, big, impactful, or like quite emotional when you've gone through the experience with somebody and like
Hmm.
real dug deep and figured out what's happened. Obviously, I know you probably can't mention their names, but person A,
Um,
I'd love to hear a
Well,
story.
I mean, some of my clients have been very public about
Okay.
working with me, and they've actually told their stories. So,
Well, that's
one
fun.
of the stories that is public is there's a poker player called Fedor Holtz, and he came to me. He was a very strong online player, but he hadn't had many wins in the live circuit. This is about 2015, and he understood there was something holding him back, but he didn't know what it was. And when we started working through this, and these memories started coming up of him holding himself back at school so that he wouldn't be seen as a target. So, not allowing himself to be the best version of himself at school because then he might be teased or the other kids might pick on him or something. So, he like created an artificial cap on the way that he was performing, and it started to show in these sessions. We could see that he was actually doing the same thing in his poker as well. And we had this session where we sort of broke through this idea that he no longer has to do this, he no longer has to hide. And we finished the session and he was like, I'm just going to win now. And then he went through this run in poker where he won like $30 million over about a year and a half and retired. And it was like literally, it started about 2 weeks after that session. And I was working with him through the rest of that period as well. But it became like this crazy streak in poker, one of the biggest streaks of big wins that anyone's had in history. And yeah, it was like this goosebumps moment when at the end of the session, he's just like, yeah, I'm just going to win. And then he did. And it was like, and that's the sort of thing that's exactly the sort of thing that we're looking for. We're looking for these narratives of like, I'm safer if I don't do this, to then work through those issues so that someone can actually perform their best.
Quick, Elliot, hypnotize me.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
good.
You have like a really hypnotizing voice as well, like with your accent and stuff. So I can say
Yeah,
like
this
that's
is
how it
10
works.
years of it. Yeah, 10 years. 10 years of these calls.
Yeah, I feel like I'm sort of just getting hypnotized already. Like, whoa. No, that's cool. I'd love to hear like sort of the process of sort of what you go through
So,
to
so
hypnotize someone.
the way that it works, there's no magic to this. It's not like the stage shows or the stuff you see on TV. The beginning's very like guided meditation. So, have you ever done meditation before, Corey?
Sure
Like,
have.
excellent. So, if you think of the beginning of a meditation process where you're like doing a body scan, you're relaxing. So, it's very similar to that sort of process. The difference is when you get to that very relaxed state with, let's say, mindfulness meditation, what you're doing is you're sort of just refocusing on your breath. So a thought comes in, you refocus on your breath, and that's the process of meditation. And as you get better at it, you can control those thoughts better. And that's really what you're doing as you're meditating. You're learning to control your thoughts. With hypnotherapy, what you're doing is when you reach that same state of deep relaxation or trance or meditation, or however you want to describe it, instead of letting go of your thoughts, you're amplifying a particular emotion. So let's say you were coming to me because you had anxiety. So we get you to that very relaxed state, and then it'd be like, okay, so Corey, I'd like you to tell me a time in the last 2 weeks when you felt anxious. And you might be like, oh, I don't know, I was out in the shops and suddenly I felt myself becoming anxious. Okay, what did that feel like in your body? And you'll say, I felt a pressure in my chest, I felt sickness in my stomach. And then it'll be like, okay, when else have you felt that way? What's the next time now? Five, four, three, two, one. And in that state, these memories start popping up because the subconscious is dominant and it understands where the fear is coming from. And then it will create this line of memories where it'll be like, I was 12 and this happened, I was 8 and this happened, I was 5 and this happened. And we start to see this narrative as to why, particularly for you, being in a busy, crowded shopping center would be stressful. um, we then start to adjust and change those memories. So we go back, we do inner child work, we go back to the younger child, we help them through it. We start reframing and changing the memories. So let's say it's bullying. Like, to the child, it was terrifying to be bullied. But as the adult looking back, it'd be like, what do you see? I see a 7-year-old pushing over another 7-year-old. Okay, so we've taken this from a life and death threat to something that's relatively normal and not particularly scary from your adult eyes. And as we adjust the way those memories are seen and the way those memories are viewed, those memories are stored in a different way. So it's no longer a trigger to a life and death event. It's now something that happened in your past. And we're working through looking for these significant triggers that are causing the self sabotage in high performers' lives. And if we work through those, then that same event in that supermarket, which might not be the best example, but it's the one we're using here, um, in the future, that doesn't trigger them in the same way because the memory that was triggering that fear response no longer exists.
Whoa. How did you get
Does
into
that make
this?
sense as a
Yeah,
process?
it makes so much sense to me. 100% get it, because obviously someone is like essentially emotionally they're living in the past,
Mm,
and they have their ideas made up from it, and their brain has been conditioned obviously for a fear response. And because you're changing the emotion around it, you're no longer signaling the fear response because the perception has changed, which allows you to get in and get into and maintain and stay in a high performance state, front of your brain.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly that. So, I had a really bad fear of flying.
Wow.
So my early, like my teens and my 20s, I was really struggling with flying. I wouldn't fly long haul, but I would fly short haul. But the way it would make me feel is, from when the vacation was booked, I'd be feeling stress. And then I'd go on like the flight would be a nightmare. I'd go on the vacation. I'd think about the flight on the way home, all vacation, then I'd fly home, and then I'd feel relaxed again until I booked my next holiday. That was what flying was like for me. And someone recommended a hypnotherapist to me, and I was very skeptical, as most people are, and I didn't really understand what I was going into. I didn't have any idea as to how this stuff worked, and we went into this session, and again, same process I'm describing. I get very relaxed. And she says, start thinking about how you feel on a plane. When have these memories come up? And I got a few memories of turbulence coming up on a plane. And then I had a memory of being at my granddad's house and being shown a picture of a small plane when I was a child and told it crashed and killed his business partner. And what was really interesting to me is it wasn't a conscious memory. So it wasn't something I was aware of before the session. Um, and then as she sort of explained, oh, this is why you're scared, tell the child they don't need to be scared, etc. So we worked through it. So I felt different about flying from the session. And then I spoke to my parents and I was like, it's really weird. This memory came up. I was at granddad's house and I was shown, and they were like, yeah, that happened, that crashed. So it was like a memory I couldn't remember came up that completely explained why I would see flying as a life or death thing. And then I felt differently about flying, and I was like, wow, that's just taken someone an hour to literally change how much of the world I can see. I want to learn this. So I learned it thinking it was going to be a hobby, that I would just be like, friends and family, oh, I'm scared of spiders. Oh, like, I can help you, that sort of thing. I was working in a completely different industry, renewable energy investment, beforehand. And I just started seeing friends and family, and they recommended people and recommended people, and it just started turning into a business that was more fun than what I was doing. And then I just had a number of sort of success stories that made it build and build. And then just things started to snowball. I quit my other work, and we just had these situations where I've had, in poker, my clients have won over $100 million. I've worked with two UFC champions over the years. I've worked with Olympians, of CEOs of literally billion-dollar companies. And it's just we've just had this story after story after story, and every time you get a good story, more people are interested in it. It just builds the business again.
Which is crazy. Have you got any other stories? I'd love to hear some other interesting ones. Like, listen to them all day.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. The difficulty is ones I'm allowed to share.
Yeah, true.
I mean, we've had. So trying to think of some of the fun ones. I mean, I had a company. I can't go into details of any of the stories, but I had a company IPO this year. That I worked with the founder to IPO a company on Wall Street. That was a lot of fun. I've had a few people exit companies. I had one guy exit for over 50 million earlier in the year. That was a really fun, enjoyable process, watching that and the stresses that come with exiting a company. I've had one of my girls won a bronze at the Olympics a couple of weeks ago. That was a fun one. She was coming back from some concussion issues, and it was really good to see her get there and get a medal. So it's really, as I say, unfortunately, I can't go in a lot of depth into the specific as to what changed, but it is this sort of constant stream of seeing people reach a level of performance that they didn't know was possible without overcoming these internal stresses. And once you do overcome it, life becomes a lot smoother. So I like to view it as if it's we're all sort of like a cube, and we're just trying to file it down until it's a ball and it can run smoothly. And I see my job is some people are, they're almost balls and they've got a little bit, and some people are cubes and there's a lot of work to do. But as soon as you get it, that they're not holding themselves back, because these sort of programs that were designed to protect them in childhood are no longer serving them, but they're still being run in their 30s and 40s and 50s, um, then everything goes smoothly. And the advantage that you have over your competitors in most environments is astronomical if you're no longer having these sabotage behaviors. So, if we take it to that poker example, um, effectively with poker, most of the players play in a similar way, style wise. And what they're looking to do is to be able to continue playing that even when they're losing and under stress. And most players can't, especially when there's millions of dollars on the line. So the work that I'm doing is to try and help the player be able to continue playing technically correctly, even when things are going against them, or it's literally you have to call the hand and there's $1 million and you have to make the right decision. And if we can work through the emotions of that, but their opponents haven't worked through those emotions, the advantage you get over your opponents is dramatic. And I think that's where a lot of that success was.
So where are the most common self-sabotaging patterns or internal stresses? What are the most common people actually need to overcome?
So fear of failure and fear of success.
Hold on,
I
you've
would
just
say,
gone quiet for a second.
oh, hello, testing. Can you hear
Hang
me, Corey?
on. You've just gone quiet.
Hello,
Why
hello.
have you just gone quiet?
I can hear you.
You can hear
I
me?
can hear you. I can hear you.
Yeah, that's weird.
Can you hear
I
me?
can't hear you.
Um,
Hang on a second. I'm just going to
hello,
take these off
hello.
2 seconds.
Okay.
See if this works.
Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello.
Nah, can't hear now. 2 seconds. I
No,
will.
still
Hold
not.
on. Hold on.
Hello.
Say something now.
Testing, testing.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, so we're back
Thanks.
on. So yeah,
Okay.
what are some of the most common self-sabotaging
So,
patterns and stresses?
so usually it's fear of failure and fear of success. So, and that's showing it in self in some way or another. So it's the person not believing that they deserve the success that they're having, or believing that if they reach the level of success that is potentially there for them, it will damage them in some way. So the sort of the classic example of this is the person who's been brought up in a middle class, working class background, and the way the parents have spoken about the rich from childhood has been really negative. So it's like, hey, rich people are bad, rich people are greedy, whatever it might be. And then, the child will work on becoming successful, and they'll reach a certain stage, and then they'll find that they keep hitting a certain barrier. So, and it can be different for different people. So it can be $50,000, 100,000, 500,000, $1 million, whatever it might be. But they see this repeating pattern of there's just a level they can't get past. And as we dig into that, oftentimes it's linked to something from their childhood as to like a level they've set for themselves. So a lot of the time when it's a guy, I'll be like, oh, and what was the most money your dad ever made? And the number of clients where the money they make is the most money their dad ever made, but they can't get past it is just huge. And then, as I say, obviously we start working through these beliefs around money, and then these things start to change. But that's a very big one. Procrastination is huge in terms of self-sabotage. And that one is usually a fear of failure, in that if you don't give something 100%, you can tell your ego that you didn't really try. Right? So we see this with a lot of high performers. So let's say you're number 5 in the world in a sport. You're trying to get to number 1. You think you're trying to get to number 1. And you'd be talking to me and I'd be like, okay, so Corey, what are the things the person who's the best in the world does that you don't? And often these people have a list and they know all of the things the other person's doing. Like, okay, why aren't you doing that? And they don't have an answer for it, because they know what to do, but they also know they're not doing it. And what it is here is, if they try everything and they fail, they believe it's going to be so devastating to them. But if they don't try, they can tell themselves they chose not to do it. And if you choose not to do it, it's not so scary. So that's something that definitely shows itself an awful lot with people in different industries. And, we've all got it to some extent. There are all of us have some certain things that we know we should do that for whatever reason, there's a block there. And, we're all just a work in progress on this journey.
That's the same. That's insane. What else? What else is there? Because you have procrastination and.
So fear of failure, fear of success, self-sabotage coming up. I mean, there's sort of self-sabotages in lots of different emotional areas. So fear of rejection is a big one. So with people running businesses, usually that fear of rejection comes up with either sales calls, asking for investment, or issues with staff. And these rejection issues can be really strong for people. So again, they'll find that there are so many salesmen out there who know they should have a list of phone numbers to phone, and they're not sitting there making those calls. And they're not making them because they're uncomfortable, because they might get rejected, and being rejected is painful. And from an evolutionary perspective, being rejected by the tribe is a very scary thing. And it was life or death thousands of years ago. And I think there's still a little bit of that in us, that, that's why it's hard to ask out the girls sometimes. That's why it's hard to make the sales call. That's why it's hard to ask for the investment. And like I said, people like to keep things in limbo. So if I don't ask, I know I've got it there in the background if I choose to do it. And they feel safer keeping it in limbo than getting the result of the question. And I think that's something that most people in most businesses, there's somewhere that could be happening.
Ignorance is bliss.
Exactly. Yeah, it's safety, and especially for the ego. It sort of it makes you feel like you still have a life raft of some kind.
Which is just comes back to hesitating.
Yeah.
That's definitely where that block comes through of like, oh, you should be doing this. I know I should be doing it, but I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
No, I love that. So from your perception, for people who are sort of at that stage in their life where they're like, cool, I really want to start investing in myself. I want to figure out the best thing for me to start doing to make myself the best. What would you encourage people to do try?
So the way that I see mindset work is you actually need to know what you should be doing first. So if you're saying, "Hey, I want to set up a new business in whatever, it doesn't matter what it is, um, but I don't know what to do. I don't know how the business works," then you shouldn't be getting a mindset coach. You should be getting a business coach. So you should be, first of all, working out exactly what it is that you need to do, and then have like the roadmap that's been set out for you by someone who's an expert in the area, who's done it before. Read all of the books on the subject, etc., etc. If you have that roadmap and you're finding it impossible to follow the roadmap that you know is correct for you and your business, then, or whatever else it might be, for you and your fitness journey, you and your sport, you and your relationship, if you know what to do but you're incapable of doing it, that's when you seek out a mindset coach. And I think it's very important to have that definition here, because I don't think mindset coaches are right at every point of someone's journey, and I don't think business coaches are right at the point of everyone's journey. It's just something that, you know, you've got to work out where you're really at, and then what is going to help me move the needle most. And as I say, if you've got a list of things that you're not doing that you know you should do, and it just feels really hard, or like there's an invisible force field, then that's mindset work that you need to be doing. My preference is obviously hypnotherapy. That's where I've had my success. That's where I've seen the changes in my life. And you know, we have a whole team of hypnotherapists from very, very different price ranges. So we usually have someone who is right for almost anyone who reaches out, and that's just at elliotroe.com on my website. So typically, to work with me, realistically, you would want to be a top performer in your industry. Otherwise, it doesn't really make sense. That's who I'm working with. But the issues for everyone are the same, and we have these processes, these people who can help you work through those things. If it is a mindset issue, but if it's a business issue, if it's a strategic issue, then make sure you find yourself a business coach.
Yeah, that's actually such good advice. I rate that really highly. So, what are you like most passionate about at the moment?
I mean, boringly, as probably every father says, like my family. Like, yeah, that's the truth. Like, I love, you know, we're here in Utah, we're living the family life. So that's a ton of fun for me. Having kids has been a big part of, you know, my happiness in life, and that's a ton of fun. And then just, I think when it comes from more the business side and self-development work, and helping people, the sort of the big message that I like to share is that you're not your issues. You've just learned them. And I think that's something that's really key for people to take on, people to hear, people to start to think about and process around that as a comment. So many people will come to me and they'll be like, "Hey, I'm an anxious person," or I'm an angry person. And that puts them in pretty difficult spot, because if you're telling yourself and everyone else that you're an anxious person, you're going to feel anxious, and it's going to seem like it's something that's immobile, it's not changing. um, if you start reframing it to, "I learned to be anxious at some stage," then that's something that has a lot more flexibility. And I think if people start to view themselves as, "I learned to be angry because it was safe. I learned to be anxious to keep myself safe. And I'm now in the process of trying to unlearn those things," then that gives you the freedom to make big changes in your life and actually experience reality in a completely different way, because you're giving your subconscious the option to view the world in a different way. Whereas, as say, if you label yourself, then it's much more difficult to see any flexibility there.
Insane. And how do you use like this stuff, like all this knowledge that you have for everything, to, in a family sense, and like in
Oh,
your
with the
own personal life?
kids.
Yeah, like how do you use that
Um,
with like your like relationships and the kids and stuff like
so
that?
I mean, there is like an osmosis that comes with this, where, I mean, I think I've done probably 14,000 sessions now. So it's a lot of hours of talking to people on these types of subjects. So I've seen a lot of the things parents have done wrong, because a lot of the time the session's about what the person's parents did wrong. So obviously that creates a lot of things to think about when you're raising your children. So, you know, we don't smack our children. We, I mean, I don't think we've raised our voices really, our children. Everything is very sort of shown with love, with education, trying to help them think around issues, trying to help them work through different things in different ways. Um, so there's definitely a lot of coming from a place of love and support, and we've been fortunate; they're well behaved, and it may have just been easy for us. Um, but that's certainly one thing. There's a lot of mistrust that seems to be built with people who smack their kids. So that comes up an awful lot, that the issues from the adult are stemming from being hit as a child by a parent and feeling that they weren't ever really loved or weren't truly safe. And I would say that's something to just be aware of if you are a parent, that your child might be processing it in a way very differently from how you think you're processed, it would be processed. And then, communication is key, in other relationships in my life, and everyone else's. And one of the biggest things I've learned is that you can't fix your own blind spots. So, I have a hypnotherapist I speak to every 2 weeks. I've done that for 9 years. Um, I have a business coach. I have the sleep coach I mentioned. I have a personal trainer. Like, I do all of the self care things because I've learned that the highest performers do that. And a lot of these people, they're not specialists in my subject, but they're certainly more intelligent than me. I work with some truly gifted people, and these very gifted people are reaching out for help to solve their problems because they understand they can't see their own blind spots or work through their own blind spots. And I would say that's one of the things I've learned, is that if these truly gifted, top in the world people are doing this, then surely I should be doing that as well. So I can't expect to fix my own problems without help from the outside. So sort of having the confidence to say, I also get coaching. And this is something that, I mentioned quite a lot. Like, I think it's a red flag if a coach doesn't have a coach, or they're not doing something in terms of their own self-development. I think it's important that everyone who's in an industry where you're helping others, is also looking for that same help themselves, and is sort of open to the fact that, yeah, this is a difficult thing to do. We're going to hide the most important stuff from ourselves, and you're going to need someone to push you and prod you and ask you the questions you don't want to answer, because we all have them.
That's fire. That is. I really like that. That's really good
Oh,
advice.
thanks, man.
And another thing that I was thinking about when you were talking was I was just unsure if maybe like the listeners who are listening right now are extremely aware of how the subconscious works. I'd love
Mm.
for you to give like a brief explanation on that.
Okay, so my description of it, because I do believe all of these things are somewhat more an art than a science still. So this is the way that I view the subconscious and the conscious mind. Um, the subconscious's job in our mind is effectively to keep us safe. So we have this program that's running behind everything else, that is, it wants you to be fed, it wants you to have a roof over your head, it wants you to have a partner ideally, but not super important, but that's still something that it will sort of latch onto, and it wants you to not die, right? And if you wake up in the morning and you've got those things, your subconscious says, I've done a great job. On to tomorrow. It does the same thing. So effectively, what we're looking at, and then the conscious mind is what's going to have the wants, the desires, the needs. So, hey, I want to be wealthy. I want to be this. I want to be that. And then you've got your subconscious in the background that's playing these, hey, but that might be dangerous. People might not like me. So it's trying to hold you back from taking these risks because it's so much safer in the comfort zone. So long as you're comfortable, so long as you have that roof over your head and you're fed. And in the Western world, most of us have that. So effectively, with this sort of this dance between our conscious mind that tells us the life that we think we want to live, and our subconscious that's just saying, I just don't want you to die. And all of those programs in the subconscious typically are learned in our very early youth, around up to about 7 or 8 years old, is where we're learning those survival programs. And then if there's PTSD, that also adds to them. So people who've been in war, people who are sexual assault survivors, those sorts of things. And what we're looking to do, as I say, is just dig into that subconscious and help it understand that the 5-year-old who created this program isn't the right person to be guiding our 40-year-old life. And that's really the sort of the dynamic that we're playing with here.
For sure. That makes so much sense to me, especially when you're looking at in terms of like the subconscious as like fear and then the high performance or the conscious as desire. That's sort of how I split it up in my own head.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are your goals moving forward, Elliot? What are your goals for 2022, 2023? What's coming up?
We have an iPhone application. We call Prime Mind. We want as many people to try that as possible. You can download and try it for free. That is sort of a bit of a passion project for me, because what we're doing is we're bringing this sort of mindset work and subconscious work to the masses, because literally anyone with a smartphone can try it for free. So that's like quite an exciting thing to try and grow. And then in terms of business and things, it's really just keep doing what I'm doing. I'm very fortunate. I get to talk to very interesting people most of the day, and help them try and become the best in the world at something. So it's like a fun game for me. Like I said, people at the Olympics, people in sports events, people in businesses and things. So I'm quite happy to rinse and repeat on, on that stuff. Like if I just keep doing what I'm doing, I'm not particularly fussed about growing that side of the business. But certainly the helping more people and getting this message out, and certainly that message I was describing of you are not your issues, and trying to have people stop labeling themselves in that way. I think that's a really powerful part of the message that I would like as many people to hear and to share as possible. Um, because I've just seen so many times when someone accepts, like, oh, I'm not angry, I learned to be angry, that your entire life can change if you get control over a singular emotion that you've been defining yourself by.
And what are you most grateful for in this work? Like, what makes you just like feel
That it works. Like it's this has allowed me to go on planes and not hate it. This is I've seen crazy success in lots of different clients who, over the years, like their lives have changed. Some have got generational wealth now. Like their great grandchildren will live different lives because of the work they've done and what they've managed to overcome. And yeah, I mean, I just have to be so grateful that what is, I think, a relatively simplistic process can have such a dramatic impact on people, because it's as simple as, I'm not allowing myself to be my best self. Oh, okay. Where's that coming from? And then the subconscious will tell us where it's coming from, and we can adjust and change it, which is a very magical process to me. It seems almost like it shouldn't exist. It's a bit of a hack.
And I think it's crazy as well, like doing this work and doing all this stuff is just so powerful. But at the same time, and like leaning into that is one thing, being like, okay, I need to do this. But then the next step is actually asking for help, like being in that position, like, okay, I recognize this needs to go. I know that this journey itself is going to be scary, but just reaching out for help in general is scary enough as it is.
And like I was saying, that's the sticking point for so many people, is it's accepting that so many people say to me, hey, I've been trying to work on this for years on my own. And it's like, they've spent years of effort working on a specific mindset issue, but you're trying to see and work through your own blind spots and safety mechanisms. And it's just so difficult to do that without someone else's help, because it's literally the whole reason for the safety mechanisms is that you can't see them. You're not aware that you're running these programs.
Oh man, it's so funny how our own minds just get in our own way. Get in our own way. Damn it. Well, Elliot, this conversation's been awesome. For everyone who's listening, where can they best find you? Obviously, the app Prime Mind. Elliot told me about it before the call, so I've just downloaded it. Downloaded it on my phone.
Stuff. Let me know
So
how
I've
you
got
get
that.
on.
Yep.
There we go.
And so that's one. Where else can people find you?
So Prime Mind is iPhone or Google Store, Google Play, sorry. And then if you're interested in the actual coaching side or talking to any of the coaching team, elliotroe.com, ELLIOTROE.com. and then just click like application form, and there's a form you fill out, and we just fit you with the right coach, and you can see if the fit's good. But certainly, yeah, they're the best places. It's just elliotroe.com or Prime Mind on the phone.
And you've got social media?
Yeah, at Elliot Roe on Instagram and at Elliot Roe1 on Twitter.
Awesome. And I'll put all those links in the show notes
Perfect.
below. So, Elliot, before you go, what I try to do is because it's all good and well to learn all of this stuff and think about these, but I like to challenge the listeners to actually take action on something. So, from your point of view, if you were to give someone like a small task for them to do today or this week to challenge them to do something, what is something in your mind that you would like to challenge or encourage someone to do after listening to this podcast?
I would sit down and I would say, write down the things that the person who's the best in your industry is doing, and then put a ticker across next to the things that you're doing also. So write down all the stuff they're doing and then just a ticker across, and then ask yourself the question, you know that that's what the best in the industry is doing. Why aren't you doing the same? And it's like the information you'll get from that question is enormous.
I think I'm going to do that myself, mate.
Good stuff. I hope so.
Completely honest. We got a new app and a new exercise to do. I'm excited.
Excellent. Well, yeah, let us know how you get on.
Yeah, for sure. Well, again, man, thank you so much for coming onto the show and spending your time sharing all of this real good stories and stuff.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Elliot.